Good evening, everyone. My name is Carlia Swanson, and I'm Miss Blue Ridge, and I'm just so grateful to be back in 2022 with another artist series. And I'm so excited to present to you today. I have the distinct pleasure to introduce musician, scholar, genius, my classmate, Corey Harris. Hi, Corey.
Carlia, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm great. It's good to see you. Good to be here.
Thank you. So it's been a long pandemic, but I want you to take me back to where you were when this all started.
Hmm. Well, let me take myself back here. When the pandemic was, well, actually, to go way back, I was actually in China, in Shanghai, China, in October.
Wow.
Early October, I had a gig at the Blue Note with my band in Shanghai. Little did we know that COVID was brewing, even at that moment. So, we came back, of course. We used to joke, though, that the band, we're the ones that brought COVID to America. Though not
Oh,
true. Don't
oh
say it. Yeah,
Lord.
don't get that out there. But basically, I had a gig, a bunch of gigs, I should say, a tour that I had planned in starting in the Pacific Northwest that was supposed to jump off in like March, like early March. Um, so I was living in Italy at the time. So if I remember correctly, I was touring in the States going back and forth at that time. So I had to do a show in late February at Berea College in Kentucky. And I remember after the show talking to a professor, and we were saying, well, COVID was already there, and we were talking about how it's in Europe and it's only a matter of time before it comes to America. And then I remember going back to Italy, and it was on the verge of a panic situation there, but they were trying to maintain it, a facade of normalcy, but it was basically taking over the northern part of the country near Milan, Venice, near that area. So anyway, fast forward, I had to go back to do my tour in early March, and I was starting out in the Pacific Northwest, and of course, the news reports COVID was starting to be found out in the Pacific Northwest. I think in Washington at that time, and so I was contacting these promoters for these shows I had lined up, saying, everything's okay. I can come from Italy. Oh yeah, come on over. So I flew on over, and like it was like in the span of like 3 days, everyone just canceled on me, and I played like one gig in Oregon. It would have been like I don't know, like maybe like a 12 date tour. So yeah, I was over there. I was in Oregon, just kind of like hang out in a hotel room for a few days and trying to figure out how to get back to Italy, and eventually I came back, got back to Italy, and then, yeah, as most people know, Italy had a very severe lockdown at that time. So, yeah, it was pretty much just lights out, for a while. And, but as far as the musical aspect of the pandemic, I was reflecting on this with a friend recently and saying that the positive aspects were that it really forced me musically to look within and to be content with a lot less in my music making, and just try and do things more simply. I didn't really have an interaction. None of us did with people, so it was an opportunity to look within. So I tried to do that, with the music and go back to my roots of being like a solo acoustic player. Yeah.
Well, so you mentioned being a solo acoustic player and going back to that. Are there any other like virtual projects you were able to work on throughout the pandemic?
Yeah. Throughout the pandemic, I was, well, just prior to the pandemic, I started drawing a lot. And so I released a book last year of drawings of blues greats, blues men and women, acoustic traditional blues greats, covering people from about the 1920s to around the 1950s or so. with a few contemporaries, but mostly that time period. It's called Blues People Illustrated, and the drawings are accompanied by discographies and biographies, essays about the artists. So it's kind of like a reference book. So that came out. It's self-published, but it's on Amazon, and people can buy that on my website, which is nattyworks.art. Nattyworks.art. It's on Etsy. So yeah, that's one of the projects I did. What else have I done? Well, during the pandemic, I also recorded a record, my newest record, which is out on MC Records. It's called Insurrection Blues. So yeah, had time to do that, and that's about all the time I had, because we were in class.
You were in class.
Yes.
So you talked about drawing, you talked about guitar, and it seems like during the pandemic, people are starting to realize how important the arts are. You see a lot of celebrities doing like the versus battles or workshops, all sorts of things. So what do you think is the role of the arts in the pandemic?
Well, that's a good question. There's a role of being a bearer of information, being informative, telling people, the word, the zeitgeist, the word on the street, if you will. And then there's a soothing psychological aspect to it, where it can help people endure isolation, difficult times, help them to remember and embody better times, to lift their spirits, and give them a sense of connection where maybe there may not be the physical connection. I think that's what gave what music gave to people. Unfortunately, though, it seems like corporations, especially like Spotify, they really profited off of the pandemic, as did so many other web-based, companies. And, they don't really pay us artists very much. So if you're listening, Spotify, please fix that.
Okay, so I want to take you. I was reading about you, Corey. I've been stalking you a little bit. So I read that your mother gave you a guitar at 12. So what kind were you always into music? What kind of influenced her decision to do that?
Ooh, well, yeah, my sister took flute lessons, I remember, and I wanted to play flute too, and I remember I had a little wooden flute, and I asked the teacher if I could take lessons too, and she said I wasn't old enough, and I was just devastated. I was like, no. So it was a culmination. My interest in the guitar was a culmination of just being exposed to music in school. I played in the band. I played violin and learned how to read, in elementary school, and music and trumpet also. So the guitar, I guess, we had some blues records, like some ZZ Hill, some BB King, and a friend of mine had some Lightning Hopkins. So I just kind of liked the guitar. I remember as a very young boy, I had some aunts who they liked soul music and like blues, and they like country music. So we would watch Hee Haw and Soul Train on Saturday nights, and so that was a good memory. Yeah, so that was the influences. I'm straying. You can bring me back to on topic here.
Oh, it's great. It's great. So
Yeah.
mixing hee haw and soul train and tuba and trumpet, how would you say all of those things kind of influence your sound now?
Ooh, well, I think it enabled me to have bigger ears than I would have had. I can conceptualize different sounds, and I like to, for example, for my own music, imagine horn sections and things. So it was helpful with my creativity, just my overall conceptualization of the music.
Yeah. So being interested in music, how did you get to anthropology?
Ooh, well, really, the music. What interests me so much about music is the cultural and the storytelling aspect. Which is so much of what anthropology studies. In humanity. Um, and also having lived in West Africa when I was younger, I lived in Cameroon and Equatorial Guinea for a year, and that was very influential in how I looked at not only African music, but how I looked at Black music, Black American blues based music, and its place in the diaspora and in the world. It gave me a conception that, this music is part of a larger tree. It's not just like some isolated thing here. You know what I mean? So it was very inspirational in that way. Those voyages.
Wow, it's really interesting because you can hear all of that in your music, the influences, the experiences that you've had.
Mm.
So thinking about Louisiana, take me back to, let's say, 1994. How did you get discovered?
Wow, going back. Well, I would go often on the road to play on the street in front of festivals or anywhere where they had like a pedestrian mall. So there's a festival that is still in operation called the King Biscuit Blues Festival in Arkansas, Helena, Arkansas, and I went up there to go and play on the street, just because that's what I was doing at the time. And I happened to run across a producer by the name of Larry Hoffman, who is a well-known writer, producer in the blues world. Also, teaches also in Baltimore at I think it's the Peabody Conservatory of Music, I believe. And so he heard me playing, and we exchanged information, and through our communication, he offered me a contract whereby he would finance a demo, and we would shop it around and see if there was anyone in the industry who was interested in signing it. And so, as it turned out, someone who he was in contact with at Alligator Records liked the record good enough to put it out. And so the demo that I recorded was put out in 1995. And that was my first record on Alligator Records. And so that was 20 records ago.
Wow. So that seems like a dream story. Every artist is just waiting for that moment. Like, I wish someone would discover me. So what advice do you have to an artist today that's looking for that same moment?
Discover yourself. That's
Mm.
all you need to do now is discover yourself and just know who you are and occupy it and communicate it. Put your vibe out there and find your tribe, your people. You know what I mean? Use social media. Use all the tools you have now. I mean, nowadays we can even collaborate with each other. Artist to artist, like things we could never even think of doing. We could do a whole record online. I mean, there's just so many things you could do. So I would say, make yourself known, get your online presence happening, get some music out there, but make sure your music quality is good. Don't just put out a bunch of junk. Put out quality stuff and take time to consider people who really know what they're talking about, their opinion about what you're doing. And then also I would say, take the time to get out there in the real world and play for people. You could go, I don't know, with COVID and everything, but like when I was coming up, I would go to nursing homes and play for people. I would just like show up at hospitals, see if I could play for people. I would go to any little fair, little cafe, open mic night, whatever. I was there, and I was trying to play, on the street as well. So, just really get out there and use the time that you can, because when you're younger, that's when you have more time. You don't have dependents and all those things. You don't have like a house note and all that. Probably not yet. So yeah, use that time to invest in your career while you're young is what I would say.
That's so true. I'm thinking about that now. I'm still young, but thinking about like an undergrad, I would always think like I'm so busy, and now it's like, wow, I didn't even know what busy was.
Yeah.
So you talked a little bit about social media. So what would you say is the biggest change in approach from your first record to say Insurrection Blues?
Oh, biggest change in approach as far as publicity or promotion or
Yeah, promotion, or you can talk about promotion and like the creative process.
okay, well, the creative process now, um I guess one thing about the creative process now is that my access to information is greater. So, we all have these computers so we can access information easier and conceptualize, what's going on like in a better you have a bigger picture of what's going on, a bird's eye view, if you will, whereas before it was a little difficult to get a actualized bird's eye view of what's going on at the moment of things. It was more like through research and through going to the library, reading books and watching the news, you kind of got a, in hindsight, idea of what's going on. But nowadays with this technology now creatively, yeah, I feel like, for example, with this record, it was really inspired by me sitting at home and watching Twitter on January 6, 2021, and being like, wow, these people are really running up into the Capitol. Like, and it was live. Like, I was actually watching the feeds of reporters who were the first ones on there. Like, people have seen the videos of they're inside and you see people like knocking on the glass and they break the glass and just all those, it was happening. And I was like, wow, this is going on in front of my eyes, and yeah, it was just like made me think of Malcolm X talking about chickens coming home to roost, and so from that, I wrote the song Insurrection Blues, aka Chickens Coming Home to Roost, just, talking about the significance of that event as far as history and, white supremacy in America, politics and that sort of thing. So creatively, that was one big thing, the ability to access this information, so rapidly. And then other things that are different from the first to the second record. Well, just promotion wise, back in the day now, with a record, say if I was on tour and I'm selling records, they had this thing called Sound Scan, which basically was a weekly a tally of your sales, and it is supposed to be a combination of your sales on the road, if you're on the road, and your sales in all the different marketplaces in America. This before the internet, of course. And so it's through your weekly sales tally now that promoters got an idea of whether you were a marketable artist, whether you were someone who would have draw ticket sales, and so if you were on the road now and you were selling records, you always had to like keep a tally of your CDs. I'm not records, your CDs. And you had to fax in this sound scan sheet, every week, and so that was something that was, kind of tedious and like very dinosaur age compared to how we do things now. What else is different? Well, electronic press kits, the whole idea of press kits, like now, really your online presence is, your videos, your YouTube, your blog, whatever, your site. But back in the day, you had to have like actual press kit with a 8x5 11 glossy and materials and, all those things, which all that's online now. So yeah, it's a whole different game. And I think one of the biggest things though is that there is really little industry support as there used to be. Like, for example, when an artist would sign to a label, there would be tour support. There would be all sorts of things to bring the artist along and kind of bring them into the fold, the family of the label, And now labels are not so want to invest in an artist and build them up they really want you to have done all that, and they just want to have a product they can sell. Something they understand they can sell, and they're not, really looking to like raise up an artist like they used to. So, now it's really more on us, and it's better that way, I feel, because I feel that the road is clearer for people to be more independent, more unique, more creative, the less that we have this industry controlling things. And so it's a very exciting time. People can really be independent. And, with the advent of NFTs now, what is the use of a record company? We're going to find out if they're even going to be around anymore.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. But then I feel like sometimes it's the other side. Like the internet's so saturated. How do I get my video to get the views, or how do I get the marketing? So it's kind of like, or then I also think about, like, you think about Motown and Berry Gordy, how they kind of had this machine, and we don't see like Diana Ross or Michael Jackson's anymore that kind of went through.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe not. I mean, independence is great. It's great.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But thinking about, so this kind of follows in with the quote I was reading, how you talked about you went from an interpreter to a songwriter. So I think I know what that means, because I'm thinking about like a jazz musician, how they listen to the art form, they gather all the vocabulary, they take it in, and then they're able to like speak the language. But can you explain exactly what you meant with you went from an interpreter to songwriter?
Oh, well, that is the trajectory really that I think we all go through if we're dealing with traditional repertoire and coming from a rooted place, is that we have to be conversant in that language first, and then we have to put it in our own personal accent, if you will. We have to run that through our own individual filter, and then from that, then we can mature into actually conceiving of our own ideas in that style as a songwriter. So that's the trajectory for me. I was always drawn to blues, but I like jazz, I liked rock, I like country, I like hip hop, I liked a lot of different music, R&B, but I was, as a guitar player, I was always really drawn to like the elementary one man and his guitar, and it's still something that attracts me today.
Yeah. I was just wondering, listening to Insurrection Blues, the first song is 12 Gates. Just wondering, were you influenced from church at all, or any church influence?
Yeah, we went to church. My mother was Methodist, and we actually went to a Presbyterian church growing up. And then we didn't go so much, like right around, I guess I was around 11 or 12, we stopped going so much, but then through my own interest, I was reading the Bible and reading a lot of other things, engaging spirituality and history and things. So yeah, that was always an influence, definitely. I grew up around old folks who went to church, and I went to church with them, and I heard all that.
Me too. I went to church with my grandma.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I didn't know about you, Corey, I didn't know you had an honorary doctorate. Corey, if somebody gave me a doctorate, I'm done. I'm done with school. So tell me about the process and kind of how having a doctorate, an honorary doctorate from your alma mater, and also what led you to pursue a doctorate.
Ooh, well, the honorary doctorate from Bates College was an outgrowth of, I guess, the work I had done, regarding the blues and the connection with Africa, the film I did with Scorsese, I guess, and just the recorded output, I guess, the work I'd done. So, that was a great honor, and I went up there and I spoke at the graduation, and what was cool for me was to meet the other people who were honored that day. There was a man named Dean Common who invented the, what's that thing that the police ride that has the two wheels that you stand up on? It looks like a...
Oh, the moped? Is moped? No.
Not a moped. It's like kind of... It like you see it in airports a lot. They have them in Richmond.
Oh,
They
and
even
like
do
the
tours.
malls have them. I know what you're talking about, but I don't
Yeah,
know.
I forget that thing, but he invented that thing,
Wow.
and he invented like a whole bunch of other stuff. Anna Devere Smith, who was like a writer, big writer for NBC. So that was cool, you know, just meeting those people. So yeah, that was great, that experience. And then what drove me to seek a doctorate? I noticed that a lot of the commentary, the literature about the music that I love was not written by people by and large from that community, from that cultural tradition, you know? And so it would always kind of irk me like how I would be talking about the tradition, the culture, and people would take me for some like big academic when I hadn't really even studied. I was just like, all of us musicians, you know, we have to know what we're talking about in some way. We got to know like what our influences were and where our style comes from and that sort of thing. But the more I thought about it, I'm like, well, you know, there's not a lot of black folk here talking about the blues specifically from our perspective, you know, and connecting it to our modern, you know, experience, our modern situation, you know. So I just felt a responsibility as part of the responsibility that is in the blues to tell the story. I felt like, well, I need to be able to tell it in different venues, you know, and be able to articulate it in different ways and understand it in ways so that I can really break it down for people who say things like, well, black people don't play blues no more, you know, or, you know, black people, you know, we just, you know, we just want to listen to hip hop or something, or, you know, just a lot of the um, very essentialist views about black folk. So yeah, that's what I'm here to mitigate against, if you will.
Yeah, very similar. I'm thinking like going to music school and hearing, correct ways to sing, correct ways to learn music. And I'm like, wait a minute, I spent, all this time learning gospel music and this type of tradition. How are you telling me this isn't as valuable or more valuable, thinking about like oral skills and theory? And
Mm-hmm.
so, exactly.
Yes.
Um, so Corey, I hear you're a genius. So So, MacArthur Fellow, how did that happen? I know it's a very kind of secret process being nominated and such, but how did that come about?
Yeah, I don't know who nominated me, but I got a phone call just out the blue from the president of the MacArthur Foundation explaining to me what it was and that I had won it. And so I was like, wow, you know, it was like, it was kind of like I felt like I was like a farmer and like a herd of cows dropped from the sky.
Well,
I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's like
right.
it just felt like my whole life changed. I was like, you know, everything changed, you know, in a good way, and it made me realize that people were paying attention to what I was doing when I really just felt like I was just kind of doing my thing in my own little corner, you know. So it made me realize that there is a significance in general to what we all do creatively. Like there's someone watching. There's someone like, oh, checking for you. Like, oh, I'm seeing what he's doing now. Okay, you know. So that was cool. It was heartening, you know, and the biggest part of it was just the recognition, you know, and then being able to look and see other people who've won it, and then being also able to see who hasn't won it and nominating people. I actually nominated uh, the writer Greg Tate.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he just passed away too. You know, and but I nominated him, and I got a chance to tell him that I nominated him.
Wow.
So, but they didn't jump on it, so it's their loss. You know, but it's funny when I was reading through posts just after he passed, someone was like, "Yeah, he really should have got the MacArthur." You know, man, he really should have. Though there's a lot of people that should get it. That, you know, I don't know how it happens, but yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, Corey. That's great. So tell me about How did the document? You've done so many great things. Tell me about the documentary with Scorsese.
Mm. Well, that was cool. How it came about was they. It was actually Sam Pollard. Sam Pollard is a editor for Spike Lee. He did Four Little Girls. He edited, I think, School Days, Clockers, a bunch of Spike Lee joints he edited. And so he has had, I believe, I don't know if he's still in the game now, he's getting up there, but a production company called $2 in a Dream. And they were charged by Martin Scorsese to actually, they were charged, no, let me back that up. They were charged by Alex Gibney, who was the producer. Alex Gibney, he's done a lot of, look him up. He's done a lot of stuff, but he was the guy who got Sam to put together his team to research how they were going to do this documentary about the blues. So Sam's team contacted me, telling me that they had at first it was actually supposed to be Spike Lee. This is a little known story. It wasn't Martin Scorsese, it was Spike Lee. And Spike Lee was signed on to the project, but he was doing something that didn't even come out, the Joe Louis story, which I don't even think he ever did that, did he? I don't think so. Yeah. So, but he was like, "Oh, I'm working on the Brown Bomber, Joe Louis, so I can't do it." So he bowed out, and then they were like, "Well, who can we get?" So they got Martin Scorsese. But truth be told, it was more like Sam Pollard did the work. Like Sam Pollard was the one who I was in Mississippi with his team. I was in Mali with Sam Pollard and his team. Martin Scorsese was like the name that Alex Gibney engaged to be the guy, to be in front, to get all the attention, and he did sign off because his name was on it, so basically whenever Sam would get a bunch of footage, he would go up to New York, because I don't think they were like sending things to the internet yet. He would go up to New York and show it to Martin, and, he would sign off on it, you know what I mean? Because really I only met Scorsese like twice, and it was really brief, So, but he was really cool though. He was very personable and not big-headed at all, very easy to be around. And yeah, he was, this Sicilian man with really nice tailored suits, Yeah, he was cool. So that was a good experience. And, really the best part of it was, of course, for me, was being able to be with Ali Farka Touré. And through that experience, I went back to Mali about a year later and recorded a record with Ali called Mississippi to Mali on Rounder Records. And then a few years later, in 2013, I did a book, the autobiography of Ali Farka Touré. It's called Ja Tiki, The Life and Music of Ali Farka Touré. And that's on Amazon. So yeah, that was for me the best, the best outcome, the best result, what really influenced me. And a lot of those sounds made it onto my newest record, from hanging out with Ali.
Wow, that's a great story. You have the best stories in class when you're just, I got a question about it, but you're just like Little Kim, BB King, he was playing guitar.
Yeah.
So I have a question about, so you lived in a lot of cities, big cities, small cities. What is the best? And also, what do you say to artists who are like, oh man, I'm in the wrong place. I need to move. I need to be seen. I need to be in a big place.
Yeah. Okay. Last question first. I would say, yeah, there's some validity to that, but I don't know about a big place. I wouldn't say go to New York or LA. No, don't go to the big places. Those places are, that's where everybody goes. And the value of your art is very cheap in those places. I would say research a town that is known for supporting the arts, that is medium size, where, and this is the great thing about the internet, where like the median income is enough so it can actually support you. Don't go to places like out in the middle of nowhere where people are like hurting themselves because they're not going to be coming out. You know what I mean? So that's what I would do, is, use the technology to research. What was the other question?
Oh, what's been best for you, a big city or a small city?
Right. For me, a small, medium-sized city. The best for me was I was living in New Orleans in the mid-early 90s. And that's like a medium-sized, about a 500,000 people city. And yeah, that was really good for me as far as like, creativity, getting my career started, getting known, in a place. It's really where I got to get some recognition first off from a community of musicians and listeners. And yeah, so I would say, really research where you want to go. There is a lot to where you live, but also remember that a lot of people are doing a lot of things online from where they are. There are people in China and Uzbekistan who are killing it online. You know what I mean? So it's really about your online presence, really with music first and foremost nowadays. And then I think it's secondary where you live. I think it can be good, though, to be in a community like what I loved about New Orleans. It was really like a community of musicians of all different levels and styles. Like you had your street musicians that intersected with musicians who were like professionals who were touring. And so if you were just getting started, you could get a wealth of information about just how the game is played and what to do in so many different situations, so that was really invaluable.
Yeah, that's so true. Mm-hmm. So Corey, you're an accomplished musician. So I want to know, what does your practice routine look like now?
What are you working on? Wow. It's funny. I haven't really played for the past 2 weeks. I've just been taking a break and actually just been singing a cappella. Yes. And I've been loving that. But prior to that, and really my practice routine got all messed up once I started grad school, honestly, So, but prior to grad school, my practice routine would be, I would start out and I would play like arpeggios. I would play like dominant arpeggios, major seventh, diminished arpeggios, minor seventh arpeggios, and then I would play like different chords, just like trying to get fluid on the neck, and just play different chords and just do progressions too, on the neck, and then I would also like play different lines. I'd like to play like different sax lines, so I like learn like Charlie Parker lines and play those. So I would practice those and sing those out, and then I would switch up and like just play some blues, a lot of times it would just be like learning a new song, so that's pretty much it. My practice routine. Yeah, that's how it starts out. Just kind of warm up and then ending up with, just some finger picking old blues.
That sounds good. Good. Yeah. Charlie Parker. Wow.
Yeah, I love Bird a lot. Amazing to me.
Yeah, but I feel you on the graduate school messed up the practice routine.
Forget about it.
So you've given artists advice. So what's the best advice that you've ever been given?
Wow. The best advice. Well, Big Jack Johnson told me that you can't play everything. Like figure out your lane and work it. And so that's what I've tried to do. Even though I have in my career, I did try and play everything for a minute there, but still in my trying to play everything, I tried to keep my focus being on like Black diaspora music, on the blues and the link to like the African vibe and the Caribbean vibe, And so even if I'm playing like solo acoustic, I'm still trying to impart that vibe. But yeah, that was probably the best advice that I got from the elders. There's so much of it, like B.B. King would a lot of times drop a lot of jewels too. He had a lot of funny stories too. So yeah, it's a lot.
Wow. So you're a great musician, a visual artist, a writer. So if you could have your choice, what would be like the ultimate creative work?
I would love to make a film, a documentary
Wow.
film. Yes, I would love that, So I'm really thinking, for my field work, I'm going to record it. So I'll figure something out.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Corey Harris film. I'm looking forward to
Hmm.
it. Okay, so I was talking about how you have all these great stories. So what's a story you can surprise me with? I've heard about Little Kim coming through the studio, singing on
Hmm.
stage, tuning his guitar, and the string broke. What's
Gosh,
one?
gosh. Okay, let me think. A story. Hmm. Let's see now. Gosh. Hold up now. Well, one time I was on tour in Nebraska, Lincoln, Nebraska, and I played in this blues tour, this blues festival, and we had a few days off on the tour, and I had to fly to LA to do a recording session. And so boarding the plane now in Nebraska, I had some guitar picks and some slides, and I had maybe about $1,500 in cash and some checks because I played the show and sold CDs and whatnot. And I went through security, and they looked at my guitar stuff, my slides and my picks, because it was metal. But they're like, "Hey, get on the plane. You're cool." So I didn't think anything of it. Got on the plane, and we got to Chicago, which was my layover before we get to LA. And we landed. We were about to get off the plane, and the stewardess says, "Everyone sit back down." Okay, so everyone sat back down. 6 plainclothes cops came to my seat and were like, "Are you Corey Harris?" "Yeah." "Come with us." I'm like, "Okay." "You have any? Bring your bags." I'm like, "Okay, what's up?" Like, don't They wouldn't tell me what was going on. And it was so funny because when I got on the plane in Nebraska, people were like, "Oh, you're Corey Harris. Oh, we loved your show. We were at the show last night." And some of the cops came on, like, "Are you Corey Harris?" The same people like, "Oh my God, he's
Yeah,
back."
yeah.
We're shocked. So I was like, "Oh." So anyway, they pulled me off, and they were like interrogating me about all this money I had, and I was suspicious.
Wow.
And I'm like, "Look, I just played a show, here's the contract, what. And they like ran my passport like through their central police station downtown, made me stand like in front of everybody, like I'm some criminal, detained me. It was crazy. And so after all this, I'm just like so mad. And I get off the plane in LA and I go down the stairs to baggage, and who is there but Common? And I'm like, "Yo, Common, what's up?"
Wow.
It was just like he was so cool, and I didn't even say much, but it was like I knew him. Like I'm saying, "Yo, what's up, Carlia?" It was like, "Hey, all right," and I'm like, "Have a good day," cool. It was like, but it just made my whole day, and it's like made me feel like, wow. But it was funny. I'd met Common once before. Years ago, I was at this festival in Seattle, and he was just like in the this is like in the late 90s, before he was even on like film and stuff. But he was like in the lobby looking at stuff, and I just went up and started talking, and he was like really cool. So I was just like, wow, just made me feel good after a messed up day, like to meet a celebrity and they were cool.
Well, that was a pleasant turn in the story. I didn't see that one coming.
Yeah, I know.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
So I have some fun questions to end with. So,
Mm-hmm.
what's your favorite thing to splurge on?
Mm. Hmm. Favorite thing to splurge on? I would have to say like ads for my e-commerce business.
That's a good one. That's a good
Yeah,
one.
like splurge on that.
What's a dream collaboration of yours?
Ooh, I would say Stephen Marley.
Wow.
Yeah, I really, really dig his production skills. I like his blues vibe. He really has preserved his father's blues vibe more than his other brothers, and it's like he's got his own style going. It's not all the way reggae. It's got a lot of different feels to it. And yeah, I feel like I could show him some things about the blues too that he might not know,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good collaboration. Okay, Boys to Men or New Edition?
Ooh, New Edition.
Okay. Prince or Michael Jackson?
Oh, Prince.
Okay, last question. Who's your favorite classmate?
Carlia.
Oh, I knew it. Thank you so much, Corey.
Yes.
So thank you everyone for tuning in to another artist series. This is Corey Harris. You can follow his work. Is it CoreyHarris.com?
It is CoreyHarris.net is my new website, and you can see my works on NattyWorks at nattyworks.art.
Okay, there you have it, everyone. Another artist series with Corey Harris. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlia. Take care.
You too.